Welcome to another episode of My Trauma's Chronic, but I'm Iconic. In today's episode, we have two incredible guests who are doing some truly groundbreaking work to transform the care systems, Isabelle Kirkham and Rose Regan, the co-founders of the Care Experience movement. Isabelle and Rose are changemakers, activists, and advocates who have taken their personal experiences with the care system and turned them into a force for change. They're breaking barriers, amplifying the voices of care experience individuals, and fighting to create a future where everyone in care is heard, valued, and empowered. Together, they created a movement that is transforming lives and reshaping the way we think about care. Throughout this episode, we'll dive deep into their personal journeys, the challenges they face, and the vision they have for a better, more inclusive care system. Whether you're someone with lived experience, an ally, or simply passionate about social change, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. So, grab yourself a cup of tea, get cozy, and let's get started. But before we dive in, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so we can continue doing the work that we're doing and making a real impact on the world. Now let's get started. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, fab. I'll go first. I'll jump straight in. Hi, I'm Isabel. My pronouns are she, her. I'm not going to say my age because it feels weird saying my age now that I'm approaching 30. So yeah, I'm Isabel. I'm based up in Liverpool and I'm the co-founder and co-lead of the Care Experience movement. I'm a care experience activist, occasional writer, occasional theatre maker. Um, yeah, that's me.
Hi, my name's Rose. My pronouns are they, them. I am also the co-lead at the Care Experience Movement with Isabel. My background is fashion and textiles, and I also do a lot of hand-based crafts. So I'll be crocheting during this, making blankets for our ongoing project currently at the movement.
Amazing. One thing that we all have in common in this room is we're all care experienced individuals. Isabel, can you walk us through a moment during your time in care? This can go up for both of you. Um, that deeply influenced the trajectory of your life and activism. How did that experience, shape the way that you viewed systematic change for care experienced individuals?
I can kind of think of two instances. One, I think was the first day I went into care at 9. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. My social worker at the time had told me I was going on holiday for 4 weeks. And at 9 years old, I was like, oh my God, yay, I'm going on holiday. Never been on holiday before in my life. So I was very excited. And I think now as an adult looking back at that, I'm like, oh my God, why wasn't I told what was going on? Why wasn't I told and explained what was going on? And I think that had a real impact, and I guess now as an adult and as a child, because I was like, how on earth can I make it so no other 9-year-old in the world, or younger or older, that goes into care and becomes care experienced doesn't know what is happening in their life and they are just told a fictional story of it. I think that's the kind of one thing, but to get like the two separate things that impacted me the most. And I think that had a real impact on me, and has pushed for me the most to push for change. Yeah.
It's just so, I don't know. I think I was like in my face instantly reacted when you said that. I was like, what the fuck? I think there's age appropriate ways of saying something.
Yeah. It's very much stuck in my mind, that I didn't really know what was happening at that
Yeah.
age. And it would have been so lovely to have been informed in the moment what was happening. Because I
Yeah.
had a social worker that social services were involved in my life up to that point. So I knew who they were and I kind of knew what they did. Not very much, but I kind of knew what they did. Um, so it would have just been it would have made the process a lot easier of becoming care experienced if I was told the truth in the moment. Obviously, I very quickly realized I was not on holiday. And if I was, it was a very nice holiday, but I was not on holiday. I very quickly realized that. Um, but it would have been nice in the moment to have been told what was happening. Yeah.
Definitely. How about you, Rose?
Yeah, so for me it's a bit different. I went into foster care at 16, so I was quite late going into the foster system. And for a really long time, I kind of felt like a bit of a fraud calling myself care experienced. Because I was like, oh, well, I was only in foster care for like 2 years and stuff. And it was only really when I joined the movement and we kind of had that definition of care experience, which includes such a wide range of things. So, like, our definition includes if you just have a social worker, but you're staying at home, if you sofa surfed, you spent time in a criminal justice system, all these different sort of things. And I realized, well, actually, no, I've been care experienced since I was 6, 7 years old. And I'm still kind of not so much battling it, but still kind of coming to terms with that, I think. Especially because like I'm a mother, I have a 3-year-old now. So like trying to kind of see who I am in the place of the world is quite difficult. But I suppose for me it was so when I went into foster care, it was originally emergency respite and it ended up staying on with that foster care the entire time in the end. But I'll forever remember it was 23rd of January 2016. And they'd social services spent like all day trying to find me a placement, and it was absolutely awful. And at like 6, half 6 at night, the social worker was then driving me into the middle of nowhere, essentially. It can't even call it a village because it literally has a church, a post office, a set of swings and houses, and that's it. Nothing else, nothing more. It's absolutely the arse end of nowhere, in Essex. And as we were pulling up, I just remember the social worker turning around and being like, "You're not scared of dogs, are you?" And I was. I've never been around dogs before, and I step into this foster placement, and there's two giant golden retrievers and a Rottweiler, and it was like, "Oh, whoa! I do not like this." Um, and at the time, I was really resentful for being put into care because originally I'd been homeless, and I was staying in a mother and baby unit. Not that I was pregnant or anything at the time. It was the only place they could house me. So that kind of is one of the first things is like, well, kids should know what they're getting into. And I don't know how much of this is my neurodivergence, like me being autistic, because like I didn't know what the house rules were. I didn't know that I was allowed to, well, I was allowed to have food in my room, but I was allowed to go into the fridge. And I remember my foster mum being like, "Oh, you know you can have the snacks." I'm like, "Well, no, I don't know I can have the snacks. No one's told me I can have the snacks. I wasn't allowed snacks at home. I was given food when I was allowed to have food, kind of thing." Like, and that's one of the things I remember saying when I first joined the movement was like, well, actually, kids should get to have a pack of like what the rules are in the house. Are you allowed your shoes on around the house? Are you allowed to have music when you're in the bathroom? Like this sort of thing. And then the other thing for me, that really kind of sparked me wanting to join the movement, was when I was pregnant. I had to have a pre-birth assessment because I'm care experienced. There was no reason for me to have a pre-birth assessment about whether I'd be a fit mother or not. It was simply because my background was I ticked that I was a care leaver. And I was just kind of like, well, this is a bit crap. I don't like this. And I knew Izzy at that point, and she introduced me to a fantastic care experience journalist, Sophie Alexandra Hall, who did an article with me on that. And nothing's changed. We had someone reach out to us recently about going through the same thing, which has sparked one of the projects we're currently doing at the movement. But it's just the injustice and the fact that, what, nearly 10 years on, because I'm going to be 26 this year, so I was 16 at the time, it's still happening. There's still injustices in the system that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. I feel like, I think that's like, for me, I know as an autistic person, if somebody doesn't tell me something explicitly, it's not even going to cross my mind. And I'm like, so you just expect me to know these rules or even social norms? I'm like, yeah, you need to tell me. And I feel like a lot of the time when I hate this term, but when you're high functioning, people just assume that you're just capable of knowing and doing everything. It's, and
Definitely.
I'm,
The second that you're low demand, you don't. Well, it's also for me, like, I didn't have a diagnosis at the time, so I was just difficult and stuff. So, like, it wasn't self-explanatory to do that. I mean, I very much applied the vampire rule. Like, I had to be invited somewhere. Like, I have to be very clear, very concisely asked about something.
yeah. And, and it's that stigma that, like, you're just stigmatizing the term care experience by just making you do like a pre-birth assessment. That's so stigmatizing. Like, so you think like I'm like troubled, I'm an unfit parent, whatever it may be that you think that makes you think, okay, I'm gonna prove a pre-birth assessment. Just doesn't make the system is fucked.
Yeah.
Like, how did these experiences shape the way that you view like systematic change for care experienced individuals?
I think for me, it's very simply of this is wrong. This is how I think it can be fixed. Let's do it. Like, no one else is out there doing it, so why aren't we? And I think that there can be a lot of talk in all spaces of activism, to be fair, whether you're queer, it's neurodivergent, disability rights, care experience. There'll always be people that are like, oh, well, I don't agree with how you're doing it, but then they're not doing anything themselves. So it's just a case of like actually be the change you want to see. And I've always been very outspoken is the nice way as how I'm gonna put it. But like I was always like even when I was 16, 17 and I didn't agree with something that my social worker had done, like I didn't know how to formally make a complaint, someone told me, so I'd just go sit at my social service building and be like, right, I want to see the head of the leaving and aftercare team, please. And I would just refuse to leave till someone saw me. And I just kind of applied that to the rest of my life. Just be very stubborn, I think is the nice word.
I think it's one thing that I tell professionals when I deliver trainings to like local authorities and stuff like that is young people, like children, young people in care. You know, there might be some who are naturally outspoken, or but nobody is argumentative or you know outspoken or whatever. Then don't they're not like that naturally. They're forced to be like that because you refuse to listen.
Mm.
Then they know the system in and out. Then they're like then they label them as knowing too much. And there's so many other things, and I'm like, you caused them to be that way. It's not that like naturally wanting to advocate for themselves. You know, there might be a part of them that be like, I want my voice heard, but if you don't know the system in and out, you're gonna get fucked over.
Mm.
And that's the thing, we have to grow up so quickly and be knowledgeable of all these systems around us because we don't have someone in our corner fighting for us. Like we have to be the ones to do it.
Absolutely. I think it's a vicious cycle, and I feel like unless the system is burnt down and rebuilt again, I like highly doubt it that even that would fix it, but it needs like a whole reform.
Mm.
You know,
I think as well it really needs care experience people at the heart of that. So
yeah,
like a lot of the problems I found with the system is that they don't actually do anything with people that have grown up in the system. So, and by that I mean is they don't work with us when we've left care to find out what we thought worked. I'm going to say that 'cause some things do work, but what worked, what didn't work, like they don't actually listen to us, um, and listen to what we're saying. But like, no, you doing this assessment while I'm in the middle of my GCSEs and pulling me out of lessons every other week isn't productive. Like that doesn't help my learning. That doesn't help me do anything. Just as an example, it's a really tiny thing, um, but they don't listen to us. And I think that's what I've noticed is, or they do listen. They say they listen to us in tiny little participation groups, but nothing ever happens from them groups. They just take some opinions and then they run with them and nothing actually happens that's productive. Um, I would love to say that redoing the whole system would make it better. Um, but I don't think it would. I
yeah,
think the current system needs care experienced people to be at the heart of it and for us to help make it better. And that includes us who have grown up and have left care. Like I left care in, oh my God, 2013. Oh my God, that was so long ago. Long time ago. I've done a lot of growing up since then. I wasn't anywhere near as outspoken as I am now. If you looked back at 16-year-old Isabelle, you would not see a very outspoken person. And I think that goes back to what you were just saying there, Rose, and as well, is is it can go the other way, is you can be very outspoken, but the system doesn't allow you to be outspoken. So you just kind of shut down and accept it. Like that's what I ended up doing. I tried to be outspoken and shift things in my care experience while I was in care. Nothing happened, so I was like, okay, I'll just deal with it. Um, and I think that's just as problematic. Because I just got labeled as being quiet and everything was okay when nothing was okay. Nothing was okay. Now, if you spoke to anybody who knew me outside of who was who was looking after me, you would have known nothing was okay.
absolutely. I feel like before I move on to like the next question that I have for you, Isabel, I agree with you. I feel like the like in my local authority, there is participation. There's a whole team dedicated to participation, and I work for that local authority as well. I do a role there, but I'm like, most of the stuff is tokenistic and exploitative as fuck.
it icks me, and I'm saying the word ick because it really is tokenistic. At the movement, for example, when I founded it with Rose and even before then, from the get-go, I was like, any participation we do, they need to be paid for their time, ethically paid, not just with a £20 voucher chucked their way. But they need to be paid for their time in a way that works for them. As well, like us being like, we can pay you with actual money or we can pay you with a voucher if that works for your circumstances. But also those young people never actually get put in any spaces, that's what I found anyway, where change can happen and where change actually does happen. It just kind of like, oh, let's just take your views and run with it. I've also found that those groups that they can be very selective as well with who is in them. I'm just saying it. I'm just saying it. They can be very selective and they either want, much like the system, they either want really outspoken young people who are very articulate and know how to be outspoken, or they want what young people who just won't say anything and just won't push for change. At least that's what I found, and I just don't like it. I'm like, just let the person who isn't isn't articulate or is seen as articulate come in and speak. Like let them get in front of an MP and tell them their opinions. Why not? Why can't we have that? Um, but that's maybe just me being in that headspace. Yeah.
No, no, I agree with that. Well, the other thing as well is they get the people that are the success stories, so the ones who are in higher education or are getting the GCSEs that they need,
Mm.
or I don't know, like other good, I can't think of an example other than that, but like the success stories, they don't get the people who actually know what it's like to be on the blunt end of the system, who aren't being helped and stuff. They only get out, they showcase, they pony us out as if we're the good ones. Same with like the media and stuff, like. You get into Oxford, you get the newspaper. You get into Arts University Bournemouth, like I did. I wasn't in the paper. Like it just
Mm.
isn't seen as much of a success unless it's the little sob story, the trauma porn.
Yeah, there was this person. I run my own organization, but I do a few other things as well. And they were like, my line manager was like, she was a young inspector. She was this. And I was like, no, no, don't do that. I built who I am. You had no part in anything. You can't just want somebody's success or to display or use it as like advertising for your services. You
No.
had nothing to do with it. And I feel like people want credit where credit's not due.
Yeah, I will never allow my local authority or even my foster mum to take credit for myself. I know that some will be like, oh, why are you like this? And they will similarly they expect the response to be like, oh, it's because I grew up this way and I was given all this stability. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, no, complete rubbish. I'm like this because this is who I've become as an adult, and I think all three of us can acknowledge that. It really frustrates me when, yeah, care experience people were kind of highlighted and our care experience is the main focus. It's like, no, look, we're doing cool shit. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
that it matters that we're care experience, but in that moment, doesn't matter that we're care experience. It's just an added bonus. We're doing cool shit because we can. Um, so yeah, I'm with you.
There was this survey that I did. It's like ongoing, but like for children in like care experiencing individuals. So our organisation can build workshops that actually based on what they want and what they need. So I emailed every single borough in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, except the borough that is responsible for me,
Mm,
because I don't want you taking credit for the shit that I worked so hard for.
Mm.
And I know I'm going to get more responses from my borough, but it defeats the whole purpose. I don't want people to be selective. I don't want there to be some strings attached for you. If I give you the survey to pass around, would you expect something in return for me? And it's always so transactional, and it's like, and
yes.
I contacted like lots of boroughs got back to us all over the country, and I know none of them expected anything back because they actually fuck about the people they're looking after. It's even that you shouldn't be having to do that, but that's the reality of the way that things are.
No, it's, yeah.
Isabel, you were nominated in 2022 for the National Diversity Award, which is a significant achievement. What did that mean to you? Like, and did it validate the work that you're doing for care experienced individuals? And if so, how did it?
Um, I was speaking about this with Rose actually, I think earlier today about it because I was just like, oh yeah, I forget that that existed. I forgot that it happened. Um, so I was nominated by my little sister, my younger sister. And I think that's the main thing of it for me. I wasn't even slightly bothered about the award. I was like the fact, and she's gonna probably be listening to this and watching this, but the fact that my sister um thinks that much of me as a person to nominate me for that, I was like, oh my gosh. And that was just so that mattered to me the most. However, it was lovely to be nominated and to actually get to the final stage of it as well. I didn't win, but I was in that final group. Um, it felt weird. I felt a bit imposter syndrome. I'm not gonna lie, I'm just gonna acknowledge it. I felt a bit like an imposter. I was like, oh my God, I've not done anywhere near anything that the people who are in the same category as me here have done. Um, I don't think it validated. I think what validates my work as a care experience person and the work I do for my community is that you just, if one person has had an impact by something I've done, um, I'm not bothered about achievements or anything like that. I think just knowing that there's an impact with one person that validates it. But yeah, back to the award. The most important thing for me was that it was my sister. Um, because I was just like, wow, my little sister who um sees me in that way is just so heartwarming. And especially because me and her, we grew up very differently. We grew up in very different family settings. She grew up with my grandparents. I grew up in foster care. So we had very different upbringings and we were very much across the country from each other. And for her to have that relationship enough with me to still nominate me is just really heartwarming. And I think that isn't often highlighted in care experience people's relationships, that we have relationships with people still that are that heartwarming and lovely. Yeah, I think I answered. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing that, it's your sister, despite being in different situations, really looks up to you and idolizes you. Like, in a way that she's like, you know what, my sister will be amazing for this.
Yeah, I don't even think that I don't even think it's that she idolizes me. I think she just has respect for me enough
Yeah.
to nominate
That's a
me.
word, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think she just has respect for me and vice versa. We have a lot of respect for each other. And there's 6 years in age between us as well. So like as somebody who's 28, and she's only 22, 23, um, it's nice to know that she did that. Um, she's a little sweetheart. I'm gonna stop talking about her because she just became bright red. Yeah.
Did you both ever come to a realization that the issues that you were facing were less individual at times or more systematic?
Yes. I think so. Like me and Rose both, like Rose, you went into care much later than me in terms of age, not just age, but also years. You went into care in 2016. I went into care in 2006. So big time difference there. And I think from having conversations, even just with Rose about our care experience and us realizing it was similar all them years apart and similar in the fact that even though we were in different local authorities, I was like, oh my gosh, it's the same. It's the same impact. Yeah, I don't know what you think about if you agree with me there, Rose, but
I
yeah.
do and I don't. So for me, it was I try and get the word out. The disparity between our two experiences with our local authorities, because so the way me and Isabel met originally is we happened to be neighbours. And somebody had a bit of a medical emergency and was like, "Oh, Rose, your ex-husband is old. You probably have a first aid kit." So it came knocking on my door, and we ended up hanging out after that, which is absolutely hilarious. And it must have been what 2-3 months into our friendship, you mentioned about one of us mentioned about being in foster care. I'm like, wait a minute, so are you? And it was like the Spider-Man meme of like, oh wait, you're a care experience, I'm care experience. This is why we gel so well, and all this sort of thing. And at the time, you were just starting to write your dissertation, which blew my mind. Like I just started doing my a second attempt on my degree at that point, and the idea of writing a dissertation after watching Isabelle write theirs was just like, oh god, I don't want to do this. This is way too much work. Um, and I've completely forgot where I was going. No, that was it. And the amount of help you got with your university stuff, and I didn't get any of that. The most I got was that my local authority would give me 500 quid each at the end of each year that I completed. I didn't get help with a laptop. I was very much just, but they were like, okay, bye bye, come get us if you need us, kind of thing. Because I moved to Bournemouth. I'm in Essex for context. And it was just kind of the fact that Isabel seemed to get so much more financial help when I didn't get that as much. And like, because your local authorities were one of the first local authorities to replace the maintenance loan, weren't they? With actually giving you guys the money and stuff. And that just broke my mind. The like, we're both going through the system at the exact same time. I mean, there's 2 years between us, 3 years between us. Like, there's not a lot between us. Like, I'm gonna be 26, and like all this sort of thing, and like just how different it could be just because there's a few thousand miles. No, 1,000 miles is wrong amount of number there. A few hundred miles between where our local authority was, and I think that was kind of the first step in my mind of like, this is really unfair. Like, how can we as people who are going through the exact same thing at the exact same stage in life, because we were both married, we were both in higher education, we were both like living in flats and stuff, like there was no reason in any way, shape or form for it to be different for us, and yet it was.
I do think though that shows how it is different, but it's the same. Like we're
Yeah.
still being impacted. So yes, my local authority may have been really supportive when I went to uni, but would they have been that supportive if I wasn't at uni? Maybe not. I'm just going to acknowledge it. Maybe not.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm not going to name my authority, but they were heavily featured in the English Care Review as being great. And I'm like, were you great if I didn't go to uni? Because my big brother, for example, didn't go into uni and he got no support. And arguably, he should have got more support than me. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say that you should have got more support than me because I then got support from within my uni. Um, I think I think you can just have a conversation with a care experienced person, and the fact that we click instantly shows that the system is the problem. It's not an individual problem, it's the system. Because I can have a conversation with a care experienced person that I could meet down the road. There probably are care experienced people living in my area that I don't know. But I could just meet someone at the corner shop who's care experienced, find out, and I'm positive that we could find a connection of something that was not positive about our care experience, and which would be down to the system.
Mm.
I just know it because it's the system's fault. And then outside of the system, you have stereotyping, you have stigmas, you have all of it. It all comes in, and that isn't just the system. That's the public's lack of understanding. It's the media's lack of understanding. The media's fault for portraying us as awful people in near enough every single TV show and movie that exists in the universe. Um, so it's that like I think the analogy I like to use is that we are like siblings. So we grow up in the same system and we have the same upbringing within reason. But if you talk to us, we can find common interest about things, but then we also have separate things that were problematic. Much like people in non-care experience families with siblings experience. Like even like I'm sure that happens. It does happen. I don't say I'm sure that happens. It does happen. Um, yeah, it's a good little ramble there, but yeah.
It's not remote. I feel like you've articulated like, what you want to say really well. I think it's with I feel like I'm 19 right now, and I'm having so much issues with rent and stuff like that. I know it's a significant amount of rent because of housing benefits and universal credit arguing because I live in a supported accommodation. And I've felt in that moment, I felt like if I went to university, would it be different? because they were helping with accommodation. They will pay for it. My local authority pay for it. They were giving me bursaries. Would that have been easier?
I think a lot of the system and local authorities assume and society assume that university is the ultimate goal and you have to go to uni and do really well. So they pump all of their support into that. And it's like, do you know what? University's bloody hard. Let alone
Yeah.
if you're neurodivergent, add that into the mix, add being care experience, add being estranged, add just being a young person in this country at the moment. It's really hard. It's not also a lot of people just don't want that to be their cup of tea. So that support, great, should be there, but then it should also be in other care experience people's lives who don't want to do it because that's when it gets really difficult. Like my support dropped off after I left university, and I'll be honest, that's when I needed it. That's when I needed it. I'd lost my student loan because I wasn't a student anymore. Had to leave my student accommodation, like my student flat that I was living in. I had to move out of the city I was in because who can afford to live in London when you're on a single income, for example, like all of those things. And that's from personal experience, that's when I would have needed it. And I can recognize in not just my life, but other care experience people's lives that support needs to be there. Even if you're not at uni, you should get a bursary to support you if you're not at uni, to get a job, like to do a decent job, to get support with interview clothes, to getting to an interview if you're going down the like if you're wanting to work, to do all of those things. I'm sorry that you're not having a great time either, because it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't have to go to uni to get support. You should get support just blanket. Blanket.
Mm,
It doesn't matter what you're deciding to do in your life. You should just get it.
absolutely. And I think a lot of the situation, a lot of the, I feel like a lot of people, we're gonna get into this as well. But a lot of people do not realize in local authorities or other professionals do not realize when you have a disability how much it will impact your life
Yeah, I agree.
and how like I remember I was like the local authority owes a significant amount of rent for my accommodation,
Mm.
but it's under my name, sort of. It's complicated. And I spoke to a debt, I think she's a debt specialist or something, and she's like, so with my benefits I get like a bit over £1,000, and she was like, why don't you pay that off with like pipping universal credit? And I was like, then I'm left with £300 to live. And she was like, but why don't you pay it with? And I'm like, do you understand? And I said to her, do you understand how expensive it is to live with disabilities? And people don't understand, and they're like, people get to pick and choose when individuals are adults
Hmm.
and when they're like young people. It's not a pick and choose situation; it's one or the other. Rose, growing up, you know, care experience and neurodivergent, it presents its like own unique challenges. How did you experience with both those identities that shape your understanding of what it means to be an activist in this space?
Yeah, so I was quite fortunate, I'm gonna say, with my foster carer because my foster carer has been, she's only just given up the last couple of years, fostering for over 50 years. My foster mum did, so she's done a very, very long stint. But at the time that I was living with her, she was doing her master's in psychoanalysis. And I think because she was actively always trying to improve and understand like mental health and all this sort of stuff, like it really did make the difference for me. Um, so I'm not formally diagnosed autistic because I currently have a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and trying to get a new one as an assigned female is really bloody hard, and it's just I do not have the spoons or the energy to deal with that because I also have physical pain issues as well that are chronic. So it's just I don't have the energy for that. But like I think for me it especially the role that I have as someone who's the co-lead in a really important organization, is that I'm someone who's neurodivergent and in a position of power. essentially. I mean, I hate saying that, like I do not want to be in charge, don't like that at all. But like even now, I'm sat here and I'm crocheting. I'm literally stimming in a socially acceptable form, and that's not a problem. If I go to events for one of our funders, I'm always crocheting to the extent that like people have started to make jokes that they're going to start making a catalogue of all the makes that I create when I'm at these funding events, because every single photo they have of me is me sat over something just crocheting or knitting or doing something creative. And like I think as well, like I'm very blunt with how I say things. I don't always think about how they would come across to a neurotypical. And like, but I also think that in this space, people are just so much more understanding. And I'm about to name drop here, and I don't intend to name drop. But back in February, I was at an event at Parliament, and I met the lovely Josh McAllister, who obviously is a very prominent MP and does a lot of work in our sector, and is a massive advocate for kids in care. And I made a right tit of myself. I got really overwhelmed. I was really, really embarrassed. I was very, very bright red. And I was talking to him, and I just went, I'm autistic. I'm really struggling. I'm going to go away now. And I was crying. And he was just so lovely and sweet. And then when we had a one-to-one meet with him a couple of weeks later, he was like, you're absolutely fine. You came across just well. And I think that we're starting to shift into a society that's much more accepting of, I'm going to say, social quirks in quotation marks, but obviously us being neurodivergent, us not following the mainstream norm, us not understanding social cues or whatever. And I think that actually a lot of us in the social justice system are normally neurodivergent, I'm going to say. Just because, like, I think most people that we work with are neurodivergent themselves. And I think it's because we see the injustice that happened to us as our disabled identities. So then if you then start having all the crossovers, like, so for me, myself, I'm queer, I'm not cis het, I'm transgender, I'm pansexual, and pangender is my actual identity, but no one really knows what pangender means. So I just say I'm transgender, it's a lot easier. But like most of my identities are in a minority, and I'm putting minority in quotation marks here because there's no way we're the minority. My entire social circles are queer, neurodivergent, care experience. Like there's so many of us out there that aren't following that are deviating from the norm. And I think that because we deviate from the norm, our eyes are open to the injustices, and we're not worried as much about sticking to the line and being like, oh well, I should keep my head down and get on with what I need to do and just ignore it because it doesn't affect me. Well, I think actually we're very empathetic as people, as neurodivergent people. Like they might want to say that we're social robots or whatever, but we are not. We are hyper
Right.
empathetic, I would say. Like it's I think why a lot of people are like, oh, can you like read the future and stuff? I get a lot. And it's like, well, no, I can just read social patterns. Like I can read patterns really well. And I've gone on a massive tangent here. And coming back to like how does it work for the social activists? I think it's because we are hyper empathetic. We don't see the point in sticking to the norm because the norm doesn't work for us in the first place. So why shouldn't we be out there making it a difference and making it change? I'm gonna stop now.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we get into the depths of care experience movement, my last question is: you have creative pursuits that you spoke about, it's like printmaking, origami, and crocheting. What you're doing right now, and you, which are really it's highly expressive, and it's personable as well. Like, how do these interests inform your advocacy work or the work that you do within the care experience and neurodivergent communities?
Yeah, so I've always been crafty, and I will happily credit my birth mum to that. We've actually just recently started talking again, like the last month or so, so it's been an interesting time recently. But actually, a lot of what I do has come from my mum. Like the good parts of my childhood when I was living with my parents was that I was able to be creative. So the origami I was doing in my bedroom, printmaking's one from college and stuff, but like my mum taught me to knit. I learned to crochet when I was pregnant, and so my daughter just lived in crocheted stuff. Um, Izzy doesn't know this yet, but I'm currently crocheting a little dress for her daughter for her birthday. Um, and like it's a happy space, and I will always credit my girlfriend for this. So my girlfriend did their undergrad and their masters in textiles, and then their masters is in art history and theory, and they have done two pieces of very extensive work around the benefits of crafting and mental health. And me and Izzy were sat chatting, and like both of our backgrounds are art based. Izzy's in drama. We did work together in poetry back in the day, and like my background is fashion and textiles, so very hands-on creative work in that aspect. And we were talking, and I was like, well, actually, there's nothing stopping us from just shifting over to a creative activist lens, which we've done. So what I'm currently doing is crocheting borders on some knitted squares we had donated. So this is our one current ongoing, like an ongoing project. So we've had just under 400 squares donated by people across the country, which
Wow.
is absolutely fantastic, especially because, like, as he's already mentioned, there's only four of us. Like, there is hardly any of us at the movement. And the fact that we've had this massive reach where we've had, which I might add, sitting there and counting out 400 squares was not fun. And thank God that my girlfriend's also autistic, because we were just sat there doing little tism tasks of counting and organizing these squares. But, like, that's been absolutely crazy and absolutely fantastic to experience, because one of the essays that my girlfriend wrote was around the heritage of quilting, which has now influenced my next project, which is going to be around pre-birth assessments, and those who experience them, whether they're the birthing parent or not, to create some quilts, to hopefully go up on display and to create a report for the Royal College of Midwives on how to engage with care experienced people who are going through pregnancy, whether the birthing parent or not. So I think that being able to do something that's creative and healing, because I think we can all admit that doing arts of some variety is healing in any way, whether that be baking or traditional formats like drama or spoken word or crochet or knitting or even gardening, I'd say is creative because you're having to think about things and like you can just get lost in the process. I think that it's a space that isn't currently being done with care experienced people. Going through the care system, art wasn't really nurtured in me. I don't think you'd say it was nurtured in you really is either, is he, would it? That much. Like, so being able to be in a space where actually we can tell care experienced people, hey, come along here. Like, you can do something that's creative and arts themed or arts based, and actually it matters. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be well, I was about to say Picasso, but I don't like Picasso's art, I'll be honest. Like, if someone like that can do something that's healing and nurturing, then why can't we?
For me, drama has actually always been in my life. This is a
I
little
take it
one.
back then.
It's always been in my life. And I think being autistic, um, you don't really suspect someone who's autistic and is very introverted sometimes to be very dramery and very bold and extroverted. But for me, it is honestly my outlet. I completely just let my mask down. I can be as silly as I want. And I find myself being neurodivergent in that space very comfortable and very happy. Um, I think when it comes to kind of using theatre and drama with care experienced people, it just breaks the ice. Nobody is intimidated by somebody who pretends to be a baked bean, for example. I'd be shocked if somebody was intimidated by me pretending to be a baked bean. As an example, as a way to break the ice. I think I've always used drama and applied theatre in any form of work I'm doing. I always find a way to bring it in. So, for example, we run a training course called the 101 training. That is very facilitation based. I get people being a bit silly, don't I, Rose? Maybe sometimes being a bit uncomfortable because I get them to be a bit silly when they're talking about a very serious topic. Um, but also it's different ways of learning is what I found the arts is the best. It's different ways for people to learn and engage. Because I absolutely hate somebody sitting and talking to me and explaining a subject for 2 hours. But if you get me talking about it and I'm doodling or I'm up moving about talking and things, I learn a lot better. So um, I think it crosses over. Um, in that space. But yeah, I've always done theatre. At school, I love drama. I once did a play. It was Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe in school. So Narnia. I didn't have a big part. Was very happy just to be in the ensemble. I did have to sing. I remember this. I had to sing. I can't really sing until I went to drama school. Well, I did my, not drama school. Before I went to drama school when I was at college, I kind of had some singing lessons in that. and still can't really sing, but I can hold a tune. So it's in there. It's in
Oh,
there.
that's right.
It's all that matters. I never get big parts with that involve me singing anyway. Apart from one play where it was a musical and I had to play a fairy, and that was very singy. But I think my mic was off for most of the singing part of, so I'm very glad. But anyway.
Um, when you both well, so let's dive in a bit about the care experience movement. When you both co-founded the care experience movement, what were some of the initial obstacles you faced, and how did your personal experience with the care system influence the direction of the care experience movement, and its early initiatives?
Um, there's been a lot of obstacles. I'm just going to be very honest here. There's been a lot of obstacles. I think when you are founding anything, it's really hard. It's really hard because you've got to do lots. You've got to find the time to do it. You've got to be able to give up some unpaid time. So that was some real obstacles to deal with. But also knowing that we were going to be working with care experience people who come with trauma. Every care experience person has trauma in one way or another. And knowing that that was a space that we were going to be working in, that was a big obstacle to be like, how do we do this safely for not just the people we want to work with, but for ourselves, to be honest, because we need to be able to be in this space safely. Um, it was also getting taken seriously by funders. Sometimes that's still a bit of an issue. I'm just going to be honest. Sorry, funders. Sometimes that's still a bit of an issue. Is being like, well, we're care experience people. We're the best people to lead this piece of work. That's been a real challenge. I don't know if you agree with me there, Rose, but that is a challenge. Is asking funders to understand that we are the best placed people to deliver something, not an organization that has been founded for many, 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 many years, but doesn't have a care experience CEO or care experience people working for them. Um, they're not going to be the best placed people always to lead on those pieces of work. Um, at the very beginning, we wanted it to be intergenerational and to be very, very activist led, but not in an arts way, but more
Social
politics.
campaigning.
Yeah, social campaigning. We still do that. We still do that, but we're more arts based now, thankfully. Um, it was very quickly personally established that being intergenerational was a whole other challenge. I'm holding my hands up here. There's a whole other challenge because you are getting care experience people who fresh out of the system, whose experiences are very new and updated, whose trauma is fresh, it's new for them. They haven't had the time to process it. And you're working with people who are much older and their trauma is still there. It's still a part of them, but it's sat and they have got less support than us because they're much older and the time. So that if that makes sense, it was a lot. It was very hard at the beginning. I can gladly hold my hands up and admit that. It was a big obstacle to figure out how we do that. But we have figured that out. We have figured that out.
We've kind of been floating around for quite a few years now. But once I joined, is when we kind of became formal, I suppose. So the first 6 months of my job role was actually getting the movement set up as a CIC. So I very much have taken on the logistical side of things. Not that I'm always very good at it, thanks to the ADHD. But I try to be good at it. I know how to Google, so that's a good part of that. But it does mean that when I've come along, it's kind of been a bit more formal, which has been good and bad, actually, I would say. Like absolute godsend to get easier for funding. Because obviously they like to see that we've got all the I's dotted and all the T's dashed. But also like it then brings a whole other strain of struggles and difficulties, I think, because then like all of a sudden we've got to worry about tax and HMRC who can really just go do one. Honestly, I don't think anyone likes HMRC. I mean, we had a meeting previous to this and we were both our organizations are despairing that it's just been the end of the tax year and all this sort of stuff and like another 12 months time is going to be all happening all over again. But I do think that actually, kind of the aspects that I've been involved in for founding the movement has been really really crucial, I think, because it means that we've had people who have joined us and are like, oh, well, actually, like, I only want to do 1 or 2 hours. And like, that's absolutely fine. Like, we're here for care experience people to come to and have as much entanglement with the movement as they want to get the movement to a place where they feel safe and comfortable to work with the movement. So at the movement, we are very different to other organizations who are care experienced people. We won't take anyone's ideas. We will let that person run with their ideas as much as they want to. So previously, one of our people that was part of our movement, they wanted to start a book club. So yeah, that's fine. Go off, do it. We've got the safeguarding in place. Do it. Like we don't mind. Which is I think been fantastic for me and Izzy, like with our backgrounds in the creative aspect, because it means that as we've shifted over, we're now doing our own little projects. So, like I said, I've got the blankets because I crochet and I sew. I've got the quilting project coming up. Hopefully, once I've got funding for that, fingers crossed we get that. And then Izzy's doing her fantastic workshops, which as someone who's been under Izzy's facilitation and also facilitated with Izzy, I'm so jealous of these young people. They're going to have such a fantastic time. They're going to feel absolutely silly. It's going to be completely daft, but it's going to be so bloody good. And like, I love that we have such different approaches to spaces like this, but actually, they both work in perfect ways, and will benefit so many people. And I'm very much with Izzy. If we only affect one young person, that's better than nothing. Which our funders don't always like, I've noticed. They don't like it if we say, even if only one person's impacted, that's good for us, because they like their little graphs and their out their spreadsheets and all that sort of stuff, which I do love a spreadsheet, but like actually even if one person's impacted, like even if one care experience person listens to this podcast that we're doing today and they're like, do you know, actually I'm interested in joining the movement, well that's fantastic in my book. Like that is a really good start to getting care experience people in the same spaces.
I think as well, even them just being like, oh, these care experience people have done this, I can do this. That to me is impact enough. Um, Ideally, what we would like the movement to be in many, many, many moons to come, in the future to come, is that we function as a care experience person comes to us with an idea and we're like, cool, we've got these resources to offer you. You've got our support, however, we want you to run it. We'll support you as much as possible to run it, and we'll support you and push for it to happen, but we want to support you to do it. For example, one of our old board members came to us and they didn't have any real work experience. They had little bits and bobs, and we were like, do you know what? Just join us. You can join us. You'll gain the experience. You'll get the training. Um, all of those things. And they left the movement. It was while I was away on maternity leave, but they left the movement being able to put on their CV that they've been a chair on a for a CIC, not a chair, on a board for a CIC, which is the whole point and the functionality of the movement is that it's for our community, whatever that looks like, it's for our community. Yeah, yeah.
And I just want to add on the back of that. So that young person was 16 when they joined us. They hadn't had any experience whatsoever. I remember because they were part of one of our first workshops, and they came up to me afterwards like, "I'm kind of interested in joining, but like I don't have anything on my CV." And I'm like, "If you just want to use the movement as something to put on your CV, we do not care. We know how hard it is as care experienced people to get into the workspace and then get into the workforce."
And
And they now, and Leah, as you said, they left during last summer. And they're like, "I'm really sorry, I've got a different job." And they're like, "I'm like, that is absolutely fine." We were so proud of them, weren't we?
yeah,
Like,
and as well as that, they came and they gave loads. That like to say that they
yeah,
didn't to them, they said they didn't have experience. To us, they honestly they were so pivotal in us forming and actually becoming who we are today. And I think that gets down to it really, isn't it? It's been able to give care experience people the space to grow and learn, whatever that may look like.
A lot of the work, I feel like any work involved with care experienced individuals actively involves, fostering spaces where they feel they can share their stories and be heard. And we spoke about earlier about tokenism and how exploitative it can be when there's youth participation happening. Um, tokenistic in the sense that, it's not very diverse. They want certain groups of people. How do you guys create spaces that, inclusive and diverse and, genuinely affirming for people from all backgrounds, particularly those from marginalized identities? And how do you build that trust?
I think from the get-go, we say we are care experienced. Just from the get-go, we say we're coming into this space and we have this we're in this shared community with you. So out of everything else going on in the space, they know that they're in a space of people who get it in terms of their care experience. Um, do you agree with me there, Rose? I think we do
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
think the biggest way you approach it is like, well, what would we go to if we were still young people in the system? Like, because most of we do work with young people in the system so far that we've done work with.
Mm,
Um, I mean, as well, like Izzy's about to see these Thrive workshops, and actually, rather than going through the local authority, we probably handpick who gets to come. We've gone through well, I say we, Izzy's gone through an organisation that actually actively works with the community directly. And I think that's going to make a massive impact on actually how many people we actually work with.
mm. We as well say that any space that we create is it is just for care experienced people, but we don't limit when you left care. We don't limit your type of care experience or how long you were in care for. We're very much like come to this space even if you don't know what the space is about. We will tell you what it's about in the moment. Um, I always try to make the space as comfortable as possible. For me, that means being a bit silly, kind of making the space, I guess, not making a fool of myself because I don't ever make a fool of myself, but I think just allowing myself to be a bit silly and putting my wall down enables them to feel like they could bring their wall down, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing as well, we both take off our shoes.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I think I know it's such a silly thing, but I think the second that we not so much get on their level because that's really infantilizing, but so much like we actually show that actually we're not here to be better than anyone. We're not here to be a teacher student dynamic or whatever. Like even when we do our training, we're always like, do you know what? You're gonna be uncomfortable, but that's okay. It means you're learning or whatever. But also like even then we still do our silly icebreakers. Like my go-to one that I've stolen from Izzy whenever I do a workshop or anything is what's your favorite chocolate bar? Because everyone gets in such uproar about if someone says a bounty, for example, or one I had when I did so I currently run a book club in my own time as well. And I had the first one, I've actually got one this evening as well. And like the icebreaker I did last time was the chocolate bar one. And someone turned around and said Turkish delight. And everyone, oh, and we also had someone who said, I don't like chocolate at all. And it's just yeah, exactly. The face that Izzy's just pulled, exactly. And like it's that moment when it's just such a good icebreaker. So like even if you don't know anyone in the space or you know everyone in the space, you just don't know me and Izzy, we're gonna say something that's absolutely ridiculous. It isn't intense, it's not about your trauma. And like even that I have to say that I'm going on a massive ADHD from here to here. Apologies, everyone. Um, we never ask anyone's care experience. So I know one person on our board's experience because they've told me about it because we've got to that stage now where we're kind of starting to become friends. I don't know someone else's, like they don't know all of
You don't
mine.
even know
Like
bits
we've
of mine,
never
Rose. You don't even know bits of mine.
no, and you don't know bits of mine. Like we've never it's never a priority. Whereas I think that's the problem that a lot of organizations go wrong is that, well, what's your care experience? Tell me. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we don't actually give a monkeys.
Like, I think the way we approach it is that any space we create is we know we're working with human beings and we treat them like we're working with human beings and we are. I always forget that I only ever take my shoes off because it makes me feel comfortable and I feel grounded. And that probably becomes from being neurodivergent and wanting to feel grounded in the space. I didn't even think about the fact that it probably makes them be like, why on earth is that woman who's come to talk to us about the care of you taking her shoes off to deliver something to us. Um, so I think it's that. I think as well we acknowledge that from having training ourselves is that to be care experienced, there are layers to it. There are many layers. And to simply exist outside of being care experienced also has layers. It has privilege attached to it. So I think we're very aware of that. I am. I can hands on say I am. I'm very aware of, yes, I'm care experienced, but there are multiple other privileges that come along with me. And I very much, any space I enter, I always acknowledge that in myself. I never go, I recognize I'm here as care experience, but I'm also a white woman, I'm cis, like all of these things. I never outwardly mention that, but in me, I always acknowledge that's when I enter a space, that's always there. Whatever that space looks like. And the power dynamic of us being an organization that's being paid, all of that comes into it. And I think that's come from us attending training ourselves, but also from just doing the work. And then from being on the other side, from being care experienced and having people come and talk to us and being like, that's not very good the way you've done that. I was uncomfortable that whole time. Um, so I think a lot of that comes into it. I think that's how we kind of acknowledge it. Um, yeah.
I think it's amazing that you guys acknowledge it. I think there's a lot of times where I've I wouldn't call it workshop or go into like away days um or trainings and stuff like that, and I'm like, if you don't acknowledge that, you don't have to be like, oh, I'm white, I'm this. You
Yeah.
know, we all can like
Yeah.
see. But when there's no talk about intersectionality in your work, you're like, why are you here? Like, I don't know why my voice changed when I said that, but why are you here? Like, it's it feels like there's so many parts that are basic that are
Yeah.
that are missing. From your guys' experience, what are the most harmful misconceptions about care leavers that you constantly encounter in your work? And how do you counter those misconceptions both publicly and within, policy discussions when you do social campaigns?
I think, and I'm going to steal one that Isabel actually usually says in our training, but that's only because for the last month or so I've been back in contact with my mum. That we don't have families and our families don't care about us. When Izzy said that in the past, I've always been like, oh, well, that's not it for me, so that doesn't apply to me. But actually, thinking about it, I've always been in contact with my grandparents and stuff. But actually, the last month or so since I've been back in contact with my mum, actually, they do care about me, and it's not because I was unloved or anything like that. And I think as well the other one that I not so much face, but like I'm always aware of when I go into spaces because I do a lot of work because I'm closer to London than Isabel is. Whenever we go to something, it's usually me that ends up going to there. And amount of times I'll be going to something that's to do with care experienced, but I'm the only care experienced person in the room because everyone else is a professional, whether that's a teacher or university spokesperson or a social worker or a practitioner. So I think that's the one I face most is that actually working in this space, I shouldn't be care experienced.
Yeah. That was one of the things I was going to say is that we can't be seen as professional, I think. That we
Yeah.
can't be seen as having our lived experience and that being separate from being professional. Um, Definitely the point you made about relationships there is, I think it's not even just with family. I think a big stereotype, and I guess people just assume is that we can't form relationships ever, blanket. And I think as a movement, we're showing that we can because we have relationships as a movement. We're a very strong team. It's taken a bit of time to become strong as things happen like that. It takes time to get to know your colleagues, but we kind of that's how we do it in that sense. For me, the big one is that I'm going to mention Tracy Beaker because I hate Tracy Beaker, but that's often seen as being naughty, disruptive, challenging, all of those things. And I think sometimes we can be. I'm just going to acknowledge it. Sometimes we can be, but also so can other people. That's just sometimes just happens. It's human nature. And I think as a movement, we challenge that by being like, yeah, we're being vocal. We're doing this, we're doing that. And you're going to listen to us because we're care experienced and the way we're doing it isn't your expectation of us. In terms of the Tracy Beaker stuff, I think I dislike the show. I'm very vocal about it. Very vocal about it. However, I did get a t-shirt which had a Tracy Beaker quote on in a mystery bag and it made my day. But sidetracked there. I think as a movement, we challenge it by showcasing care experience people as they are, being like, this care experience person's just done this person's just done this. We showcase how different every single care experience person is. I think I've made sense in my little ramble there. Um, I think that, yeah, that's how we get it across. I think I found as well, a lot of people don't expect care experience people to be so articulate in the way that we do things and say things. I don't know if you guys have, okay, you both agree with me there, fab. I don't think they expect us to be so articulate, but I never, ever understood why. Because our upbringings, we have to be articulate to survive. We have to be able to sit in a lack review meeting. We have to be able to sit there and say everything that's going on in our lives so well, because then it gets written down and put in a book and well, in a notepad and chucked away. But um, we have to do it. We have to be able to do it. And it's like, sure, maybe we have a bit of a northern accent, or maybe we aren't using your big fancy words, but we are being articulate. We know what we're saying. We're getting our points across. No.
See, my thought on the back of that is because, and I think this is a judgment on the social services, the social care system, actually. They expect us to be thick. They expect us to be stupid to
Yeah.
be able to do that because the
Oh,
fact of, well, we're care experienced. That must mean we haven't been in school or we've had really bad childhoods or whatever. And actually, that goes to show that they think that the social care system is ruined because we can't be smart or whatever, and we can't articulate our words. So I don't think that's so much a judge. I think it ends up being on us, but I think that's because they understand that the social care system is fucked.
Mhm. I think
mm,
it goes hand in hand with the fact that they think that we aren't educated, we aren't in employment. The amount of people that I've met that have gone, oh, you don't look like your care experience, and I'm like, why is that? Is it because I have a job, or because I have a degree, or like where is this coming from? I don't
what does a
understand.
care experience person even look like?
I don't know. I always say they probably think we
You
look
don't
like
look queer.
well, yeah, it's probably because they think we look like Spider-Man or someone, is why as
Trace
well.
Beaker, pink curly hair.
Yes, I mentioned Tracy Beaker. I did my undergrad degree. I wrote my undergrad dissertation on Tracy Beaker and the impact that that show actually has on our community. Um, because it isn't done well. Um, Even the new series of The Dumping Ground is not done well. Um, it doesn't have care experience people writing it. It doesn't really have them talking to us very much, especially not in the very beginning series. It didn't have them talking to care experience people. Um, and it is the first thing people jump to. I was in my first year of uni in a lecture about care experience, which was a whole interesting thing to sit in a lecture, how to work with care experience people when you're care experience, being like, oh, how do I work with me? Um, and one of the questions was asked was, what do you know about care experience? And majority of the people in my room in a very privileged university or drama school said Tracy Beaker. And I was just like, are you joking? Why did none of you at least say Spider-Man or something? At least I would have been okay with that because I like Spider-Man, but it's it's a very problematic
Mm.
thing. And I think the media really does play into it. I think any villain story, even things like EastEnders and stuff, care experience is normally used as a storyline. But that's not the question. It's not relevant right now.
When
Yeah.
somebody says I'm bright or articulate, I react as if I'm not. I do feel offended to that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know the intentions behind it. It's not like, oh my God, you're articulate. Because I'm like, there's so many things. I'm like, okay, is it because of the way that I look? Is it because I'm brown, a South Asian female? Is it because I'm autistic? Or is it because I have fluctuating capacity, so my communication looks different? So I sound, you didn't imagine the paperwork me and the real life me to
Yeah.
be different?
Yeah, I
What
agree.
was it? Or what is it? And I'm like, I hate it when people say I'm bright and articulate. I'm like, that you should see me when I'm struggling.
Hmm.
I am absolutely distressed. I'm unable to regulate. I can't even form sentences. You don't see that reality. Or when you see me struggling with my communication, but you're bright, you're articulate, you can do this, you can say it. No, right now in this very moment, I can't say what I want to say. I will shut down. Do I can be nonverbal. There's so many different influencing like factors,
Mm.
but you're just I feel like the thing is what I noticed if you're bright and articulate, you can't struggle.
Yeah, I totally
That's
agree.
ableism, though, I think, not so much care experience.
Yeah, it goes together. It goes together, I think, as well.
Care experienced individuals, they often face lifelong repercussions from their childhood experiences. What do you think are most overlooked long-term challenges, and how does, care experience movement work to address those on an ongoing basis?
From the top of my head, I think one of the big ones is financial impact of being care experienced. Um, just from the get-go, I don't think we're really ever taught how to manage money or how to be financially stable, let alone actually being given money to be able to try to learn how to do that. And I think as the older you get, the more you kind of realize, oh, if I was taught at 12, 13 how to save money, I'd probably be quite good at it by now and understand how to budget and all of those things. As the movement, the way that we try to combat that is from the get-go paying care experience people for any work they do with us. And that is to just acknowledge that their time is precious. They could be taking time off work, off school, off it could have an impact on something that they're doing in life, and we want to acknowledge that their time is valuable, so we pay them for that. But also give them the autonomy to make that choice to be paid, and make those financial decisions. That's the way I see as a movement. We're trying to combat that from the get-go. We don't pay unless somebody asks. We don't pay in vouchers. We don't be like, here's a £20 Amazon voucher. Thank you for giving 12 years of your time to us. We don't do that. We're like, we're going to pay you for your time properly and as good as we can. Um, I think another thing is we acknowledge that the impact of the trauma of being care experience and how even if you don't maybe mention your own personal experiences, just being in the space is re-traumatizing sometimes. So yeah, my point was acknowledging that yeah, we have being care experience, you come with trauma, whatever that trauma may be is personal, but as a movement we acknowledge that trauma is lifelong. And even myself, I've had times come up where we've been talking about something and I've been like, oh, that that's hit a nerve. That's brought something back that I didn't realize was there, or I knew it was there because I'm working on it. And as a movement, we acknowledge that by offering to pay for anyone who works with us. It's counseling. We just from the get-go, we're like, we know that this is going to be uncomfortable for you. We want to offer this back. So you don't feel like you have to sacrifice your mental well-being in order to make a change. Um, and I think we acknowledge that trauma of being care experience is lifelong, that you could be just fresh out of the system and it'd be really fresh and really there. But you could then also get to like 80 years old and it still be there. Things are still going to kind of come up.
Like a lot of the work you said, it can be quite traumatic, like not traumatic, re-traumatizing at times, or it could be difficult. How do you manage the personal burnout in a very emotionally taxing environment or work that you do? And what steps do you take to like look after yourself when you're doing such amazing work?
Burnout is very real, and I think being neurodivergent, I recognize that immediately in myself. I can recognize it. But I think I'm very careful with what work I take on and knowing if it's going to impact my care experience trauma. On a personal note, that's how I do it. As a movement, we are very understanding. If somebody needs a day off because they're struggling, I'm like, why wouldn't we offer you that mental health break to kind of allow yourself to breathe and step back? Because you can't do good work or do good work, be good to yourself and see actually survive if you don't acknowledge that the work is traumatizing and don't look after yourself and each other. Um, I do lots of self-care. I screen break. I'm very vocal with that on a rose. I'm like, screen break, mute things, don't go on, don't do this type of work outside of work hours. Actually have time off away from your phone, away from your computer, away from kind of work. Um, I think that's how I do it without going into the ins and depths of how I do self-care. But Rose, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so we job share. That's the
Um,
biggest one. That's the biggest one for me. No offense, is it? You're like, oh, I forgot the one. Yeah, the big thing obviously is that me and Izzy job share, and like that just makes all the difference. So I'm happy to share that I'm currently struggling a lot. Last week, but last month or so, unfortunately, my medication's been changed, so it's not working as effectively as it should be, and then my mental health medication. And I can message Izzy and be like, actually, my meds aren't working. I can't sleep. Or actually, I need to shift this meeting to a bit later because I'm not actually awake because and whatever. Or like, actually, I can't concentrate. Can I just make blankets for the day rather than doing emails or meetings or anything like that? And like, we're just so flexible, and I love that. I love that for both of us. Like, anytime that one of us is down, we can tell the other, but like, we don't even have to say what's going on. We should be like, I'm struggling. Do you mind doing X, Y, Z? Or actually I need to take a break. What can be shifted? What can be the bare minimum that needs to actually get done so the movement can continue, to what's the additional stuff that actually isn't that much of a priority that can be put on the back burner. Um, as for me personally, I'm not very good at realizing that sort of thing, but I am getting a lot better at telling Izzy or my girlfriend, who can then be like, well, actually, Rose, you need to stop, or you need to tell Izzy, or you need to tell Rue, or you need to get some additional help, whatever. Um, but I love the fact that we at the movement, we're all very well supported. I mean, we share our ups and we do share our downs on our work chat that we've got and stuff. So like one of our members is currently doing their degree. They just messaged us about like, oh, I actually didn't get a good score because someone in my group failed. Like you wouldn't. It's no different to any other work. Good. I'm going to say good workplace where you have good working relationships. I've worked in toxic places where you don't have that relationship. But I think one, as we've already said, we had that automatic bond because we're care experienced, but also we're all just really nice people, I think.
yeah, I think we just acknowledge that before being care experienced, we are just human beings and that things are going to come up in our lives that are going to make doing things hard. And having that acknowledgement with each other to be like, I'm struggling, and us being like, okay, how can we support each other? How can we work? So, work still works for you and you can still do work, but also that things aren't going to go wrong and then make things scarier and a lot worse and spiral. Um, that's And I think that that's come from working in spaces as just that aren't great to be in.
We're coming back to this like theme of intersectionality, and there's so many intersections, but some of them include care experience, neurodivergence, disabilities, and LGBTQ plus identities, and they create like unique sets of challenges for individuals. So how do you guys adapt to meeting different needs? Because in workshops and stuff, there's a lot of different people with varying level of needs.
I'm
Um,
gonna be quite
you go.
succinct and swear as well. We're just not dicks. Like,
Fair enough.
I think that I like we just I mean, the core of the movement is that we're caring, we're holistic, that we're understanding of others. And I think that because we're also intersectionalized ourselves individually, it just makes it a lot easier to do it outside. And like we are very well, I mean, we're very good at doing our training and stuff as well, as and when. But yeah, we're just dicks. Izzy, you could make it much nicer and
No,
polish that.
no. I think that was a nice way to say it. I think yeah, we just acknowledge it. Um, I guess being intersectional ourselves, it just naturally happens. I think when it comes to kind of facilitation and workshops, you never know who's going to be in the room, and always knowing that you never know who's going to be in the room, and you can't control what somebody brings into the room ever, ever. I don't mean physically, like you can probably control somebody not bringing a water bottle in, being like, don't bring your water bottle in, but you can't control what somebody in themselves brings into the room. And going into a space as a facilitator, I always have that in my mind, be like, I don't know what they're coming into the room. I don't know what's happened in their life today, what's happened in their life many years ago, or what kind of challenges and experiences they have. That for me just makes me facilitate better and acknowledge what's happening. Um, I think as well, a lot of it is putting the work in, to be honest, putting the work in to understand the impact of being care experienced, being LGBTQ plus, being disabled, being not white, like all of those things, actually putting the work into research and look at what that is like, just kind of informs you better. Um, yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that it's hard to explain because I think that's just what I've always done. I'm like, I don't know the experiences of being trans, for example. I need to research and figure that out and understand from a trans person's perspective what that's like in order to kind of know what they're bringing into the space. But you never know who's going to be in a room. You never know what they're coming with. And I think just having that acknowledgement is for me that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, and also we've been quite fortunate that well, both of our current funders are both fantastically intersectional. Um, which, and I'm going to say this as someone who obviously I've already mentioned that I'm queer and everything else. But like I'm white and I'm in Essex, which is very, very white. And it's only been like the last 5 or 6 years it's actually become a lot less white, which is absolutely fantastic to see and stuff. But like I go to a lot of events around the country, like up in Birmingham or in London and stuff, and I'm like I have to be confronted with my own biases that I've been taught growing up and stuff. My stepdad was not the nicest person in the world, we'll put it that way. Had his own biases and stuff and was very racist and that sort of thing. It's like learning through that way. But also one of our fantastic funders, Esme Furban, do a lot of learning days. And I've every single time there's one, I'm always jumping on it so I can learn better. I can give my own opinions and my own experiences as well. So helping try and educate. And I think that we are very much on that of like wanting to improve for the sake of improving.
I think as well we acknowledge when another organization or somebody else is doing the work better than us, I'm going to say it, and we acknowledge being like we we aren't the people to talk about this. However, we found this. We've done it. We've done this piece of work. We've researched it and we've looked into it. These guys are doing it better than us. So, for example, the Black Care experience, significantly better at the kind of talking about the experience of being Black and being care experienced than us. And that's, we always signpost and being like, do you know what? These guys are actually covering this issue better. They also running with it from a lived experience perspective. I think that's how we try to do it as well. And that's how we make sure we're being intersectional. I think that comes into just being care experienced as well, is acknowledging the whole sector, that there are people who are doing it and are doing it really bloody well, really bloody well. I'm just gonna say that. And why would we be like, we're gonna go do that work when we can be like, actually, that's not for us to talk about. That's not for us to cover. Oh, it is for us to talk about. I'm gonna say it is for us to correct myself there. It is for us to talk about. However, these guys are doing it. These guys are doing the actual work. Please read what they're doing. That's a good old ramble there, but yeah, yeah.
I think that that's like a good like practice, I would say, which a lot of organizations like, okay, we'll try it out, which is like absolutely fine. But you can't try it out. Um, I'm not talking about your organization specifically, I'm talking about generally. You can't try it out at the detriment of somebody else,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is.
which a lot of organizations do. I'm like, but you are not experienced, you're not trained, and this person needs support right then and there. What the best thing is to do is to refer it to, an organization that knows what they're doing and is, you know, don't have to be well known, but like established.
Yeah, I
Safe.
think yeah, I agree with you. I think that was the point I was trying to get at, but you said it a lot nicer than me. Um, is yeah, we can acknowledge when we aren't the people to do something, and I think that's the way that we've built the movement is we have networks. that if a care experience person came to us about something or they wanted to cover something, we can be like, we are not the people. However, this organization is doing it, however big or small, work with them on it. I think that just comes down to that's just who we are as people. Me and Rose and our other two team members. I think that's just who we are as people. That's just how we flow. So it's naturally just happened that way.
You're both very vocal about the need for systematic reform in the care system. What do you see as the most pressing change? I know it's very hard to put it down to one, that needs to happen in the UK care system today.
They need to speak to each other. All the organisations that are working with one person need to speak to the rest of them. It's not on the kid to repeatedly say what's going on with each freaking organisation.
Spot on, Rose. I think as well that an acknowledgement that care experience doesn't just end at a certain age. I'm
Yes.
sick to death. I'm sick to death of that being the case, being like, well, we only offer this support up until 25 because you're only care experience up until this age. And it's like, no, no. I'm probably going to need support on being care experience when I'm 80 years or probably hopefully a bit older than 80, maybe like 95. 95, and I may need to go into a care home for whatever reason in my life at that point. I would love it if the system could acknowledge that care experienced people, by the time they get to that point in their life, they still need support, for example. I would love them to acknowledge that there are many, 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 many other pressing issues which are equally as important. But for me, there's that acknowledgement that care experience isn't just capped at a certain age. Um, at my big old age of 28, is actually kind of young, but I also keep being told I'm 30 in a year and a half. So I'm freaking out a little bit about that. But a normal freak out that I think somebody approaching 30 has is there are things that have come up in my life now, and I'm like, damn, I need support from somebody, but I don't have that support from a mum or a dad, like that can offer that support. And I think that needs to be acknowledged by the system. For example, if care experience was to become a protected characteristic, in order for that to happen, there has to be an acceptance and acknowledgement from all of the UK governments and all of the UK local authorities that care experience doesn't end at a certain age just because you've left the system. That that to me is like on the ball because protected characteristics is marvelous if it happens, but you can't have that if it's gonna be cut off at a certain age because what's the point of that? Um, but yeah, especially more so what Rose said. They all need to bloody work together.
No, I'm now changed my mind. I'm going for your one because I left my husband last year, and all I could think about was, oh God, I should have done this earlier so I could still have support from my local authority. And that shouldn't have been the way that it should have been. I should have been able to do it without worrying about all that sort of thing. So, both our things are important. The entire system just needs to
There's
change.
many, many, many other pressing issues. Many, many other pressing issues. It's all very important.
Definitely. I feel like say this a lot, and I'm sure you guys say it in your workshops and stuff like that. Nothing changes the day before, after you turn 18, day before and after you turn 25 either. Everything's pretty much still the same. There's, needs and everything evolves. Of course it does. But there's certain things that are stagnant in somebody's life. That's the word. Um, and I feel like there needs to be much more support, and support needs to be much longer.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't do that to your own child, so why would you do it to,
Yeah.
yeah, just
That's something we say all the time, those
Yeah.
exact words.
I feel like if social services were going to get a pre-birth assessment or a birth assessment, they would get their kids taken off them.
yeah,
They would get,
definitely.
they would have social services as it's not all of it, not the whole system, but I think local authorities, if they had, yeah, if people actually looked into it and they were like, we're going to take your children off you, they would because the standards of care for our community while we're in care is awful. And that isn't just with foster cares, that's residential, that's supported housing, that's all of it. It's awful. Like the work being done by Article 39, they've really highlighted that
Yeah.
you could go into care at 16 and be placed with in a hostel with grown men who are awful human beings. I'm just going to say it, I'm not going to go into it, are awful human beings, and you can be getting placed into that as a 16-year-old vulnerable person because they don't see you as yeah, as being a young person at that point and not realizing you need support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the massive shocks that I had was I lived in residential for majority of my care experience journey, and all of a sudden I'm in adult accommodation. I live in supported accommodation. I have 24-hour care. Why is the guys that I live with are pretty they're all right. They're not we leave each other alone. We coexist.
Mm.
Everything's fine. But I'm the youngest in the house, so I'm 19. I had a 45-year-old that lives here all the time, and then I have a 25-year-old, which is not bad. I can understand the 18 to 25. And then there's people that come here for frostbite, and they're in their late 30s and 40s, and I'm like, you wouldn't do that to a child. You wouldn't even have 11-year-old and a 14-year-old together. That rarely happens. So why is it okay as soon as you turn into an adult? It's and I was like, it's grown. I know I'm an adult, technically. I'm
Yeah.
like,
It's a very interesting how, as care experience people, the adultification of us at such a young age, we're expected to just be okay with that.
yeah,
Um, some of the work by Rebecca Pierce, who's now, I think she's the co-chief of Article 39. I think that may be her title. I will
Yeah, I
double check.
think so.
I think so. Um, a few years ago, she released her diary entries from when she was in supported accommodation at the age of 16, when she was doing her A levels. And that really brought it to attention, but it still happens. Um, so, and local authorities, they don't have to keep caring until 18. They don't have to do that. If you come into care at 16, they don't actually have to care for you. They can just put you
No.
in supported accommodation with adults who, and I'm going to say adults because you at 19 should not be in a supported accommodation with a 48-year-old. That's wild to me. That's wild to me.
it's wild to me
Um,
too. I live it every day. I was like, it shocks me every time. But I don't really leave my room unless I'm going to work or something. I I leave and I see a grown man. I'm like, hmm. It shocks me every single time. Maybe it's I don't get out of my room that much. But I'm
at,
like, how
at,
does that work?
at
But I don't
28,
understand. Sorry.
yeah. No, 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 that was me. You continue
I, I don't
after.
understand how somebody can be so vulnerable one moment and then, okay, you're 18. We know you're vulnerable and you have high level needs. But yeah, but here you are. Like, and I was like, hey, like,
It's
it's so,
it's awful. It's what I was going to say is even at 28, I'd be freaked out to be placed in a room with a 48-year-old. Um, I can see Rose smirking here, and I know why they're smirking, but
I'm going to give context. So when I was 19, I married my ex-husband, who at the time was 45. However, my social service records show that my social work, well, my PA at the time approved of that because she thought that he was okay. And now, as someone who's going through that divorce process at 25, I'm like, oh, that is not okay. I do not like that.
yeah, it's
But the only reason I was placed in foster care at 16 was because I disclosed that I'd been sexually assaulted on this while living in a mother and baby unit. If I hadn't have said that, I probably would never have been placed into foster care. I'd have carried on still being in halfway houses.
it's wild.
it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Got a lot of
And
social services, eh?
it's and it's like a systematic issue. And when boroughs, and it's fucked up I work in the local authority, right? So I hear, like my current borough, we have an outstanding rating, and I hear professionals saying sorry, I thought we were gonna get good. I was like,
Are you doubting it yourself?
And I'm like, but like, is there enough money for bribery? What's going on? Like, it's so crazy. And I'm like, and I feel like the standard of care and what these inspectors see is so low that anything even above what they see, usually it's like, oh, outstanding.
Yeah, I think as well when it comes to Ofsted, I always think back to school. I always think back to secondary school when my school would be told that Ofsted inspector was coming, as it happens.
Oh,
My school would just rally round, get it all, and I actually went to a quite nice school. I won't bash my school, but we're very small. It's lovely, but they would rally round, get it, and then they'd pick us students who they knew would be articulate and be very vocal about how great the school is and no issues. And I think that must happen. It has to happen because I don't understand how they get rated good, how these type of things happen because they're not good. And you can hear if you listen to any care experience person that is, you even just said it yourself, like from a local authority that has got this outstanding rating. If you speak to a care experience person in that system, they could probably pick at least 10 faults with their care experience on that, like easily from the top
I've
of
been thinking about it.
like yeah. So I think it loops back round to the fact that the system doesn't actually listen to those who are growing up in it or have grown up in it. We aren't included in the change, in the discussions, unless it looks good on them. I'm just gonna say it, unless it looks good on them. I haven't allowed or let my local authority do anything about me as big as an adult. Um, they did support me during uni, but that was it. And it was even with me pushing it. I really pushed to get them to support. I managed to get them to buy me a MacBook, for example, which normally when you ask for a computer, they buy you a little shitty one. And I managed to push for it, being like, I need this because of my degree, and also it's COVID, and I had a rubbish computer that I'd had since many moons ago. So, um, I think, yeah, a lot of it comes back down to the fact that the system doesn't listen to us, which is why the movement exists to create something where we actually get listened to. Because we can get in them spaces as an organization. We can be like, cool, you're talking to Rose and Isabel, the big co-leads, the big CEOs, who come across in their eyes as very professional, very articulate. And we can be like, cool, we're bringing this many young people or this many care experience along with us to something. And I imagine they expect it to be like other organizations, other local authorities, they come with very articulate, I'm going to say well-mannered care experience people, but they're always well-mannered. But people that are very, yeah, they kind of know what to say, whereas we don't do that. We're not picky. We don't pick and choose care experience people. We're like, do you know what? We've got this going on. Do you want to come? Come along. Come and tell your MP that they're awful, please. I welcome it.
that's one. Fuck, I forgot again. Oh,
I think for me, something that sparked that is I went. It must have been like 2022 or 2023. It's one of them years. I went to a lobbying event at Parliament. And obviously, lobbying is where you kind of you're just in the lobby. You're pulling MPs over to talk to you. You're like, come talk to me about this. It's hell. I'm just gonna say it's hell for somebody that likes structure. Not the way that I want to do campaigning in generally, but glad I did it. And it was amongst that day that we found, me and another care experience person from discussions found from an MP that there was a panel event happening in the afternoon. And the charities running this event had picked care experience people to speak on this panel. And they'd have time to rehearse what they wanted to say. They sat at the front with them. But me and this care experience person, she's so lovely. We got in there. We got into this panel and we sat on the front and we just put our hands up to ask questions. And we were lucky that we did. And our questions weren't rehearsed. They weren't charity led. They were literally just coming from us as people. And we want to change that. I don't want care experience people to feel like they're being picked and choosed when they can do an opportunity. Um, because it's not right. It's not, and it's not right. But that's why the movement exists.
yeah, definitely. I think for me, like, I don't mask as much anymore. I'm like, this is who I am. Take it as it, take it or leave it. That's your problem, not mine. And I think that my local authority, I think a lot of people like think that's why I get along with senior management, and I'm like, I don't. We get along because we share our views or we have like similar principles or whatever. But I'm not going to treat someone differently just because of the email signature. I've said this multiple times. If our views align, our views align, and I feel like a lot of people, when a young person has some sort of power over professionals, is
Mm.
intimidating for them. And I'm like, my relationship with, I don't know, the executive director, right, of children's services or like the whole local authority, we get along. We have like a personal relationship. We've been through shit and back together. But I'm not. I'm gonna call him out. I'm gonna say whatever if he fucks up, and that's not gonna change. And a lot of people, my line manager, I give him looks back. But I said something about piece of work we're doing, and I was like, the executive director wrote something, and he said, "Oh, that doesn't need to be there for the parents and carers." And I was like, "That doesn't even need to be there for the professional." Showed him a remark, and he looked at me like, and I was like, "What's the matter?" And he's like, "Not everybody has a relationship with insert name." I was like, I gave him a look like, it's not about having a relationship. This is what's best for the work,
Mm.
Mm.
and I think, and it's like any sort of power or any sort of like relationships or connections or whatever you have will always be like, people are like intimidated by it. But I'm like, you shouldn't. If you're doing your work properly, that's good enough. And I'm the sort of person, I'm like, this is what I was going to say before when you're speaking about well mannered young people. We're all well mannered. We're all well mannered, but when you push us to certain, oh, I'd be the most aggressive fucking bitch you'll ever meet. And it's like, it's not, you push someone, you're fine, you get that with anybody.
Yeah.
But you're bringing that stigma with care leavers and being aggressive and all this sort of stuff. Like, what's the reason behind somebody behaving that way?
Mm.
People just don't think. So many stupid people. Trust me, if I could take people's DBSs away, oh my god, I'd be like Oprah giving out cars, but instead I'll be taking away DBSs. Oh, trust me. One day somebody's gonna get, if one day somebody gives me that power, I'm gonna have a field day. I'm gonna be absolutely honest with you. Um, what do
I
you
love
hope?
that.
Yeah. No, I say, oh my god, like the executive director we were talking about, he always wears a suit. With my autism, I'm not like I can't deal with transitions well. We were
Mm.
having a summer barbecue. We have a Calibre barbecue every like summer. Good food, by the way. Good activities as well. But he came in jeans and trainers and this plaid shirt. It wasn't even plaid, but it was like some square shirt. The way I would have taken his DPS away, honestly. Like, I was like, this is so distressing for me to see. Like, what do you mean you're not wearing a suit? I know it's a Barbie. Like,
Mm.
yeah, I might. Yeah, this is why I'm not in charge of stuff like this. But yeah, what do you guys hope the UK care system will look like 10 years from now? How can like current advocacy and systematic pressures help shape this vision?
Um, I think as Rose said earlier, they will all talk to each other. So they will all have a relationship with all the people that are involved in a person's life when they're care experience when they're in care, is they all talk to each other, they all understand. Like if you have like your review meeting when you're in care or you're in foster care or residential care, everybody in that room already kind of knows what's going on because they're already talking to each other. They kind of know what's going on. You don't have to do it. More importantly, that it's care experience led. It actually has care experience at the heart of the system. By that I mean is that we are there when decisions are getting made, when policies are getting written. We're a part of those policies being written because we get it. We get what the system is like. Um, I would absolutely love to see care experience MP, not an MP, a minister, so somebody that actually oversees care, to be honest, social care or children's social care and that journey. I would love to see that be a role in Parliament and that exist in 10 years. And that role to not just support the system, but to support the people that are growing up in the system and have left the system. Because I think we don't have that. We don't have that anybody speaking up for us within Parliament. And for that role to be a care experience person, I don't want a social worker, who's become an MP or an adopted parent or a foster mum or foster parent to become in that role. It needs to be somebody who has lived experience to be in that role. And there are MPs who are care experienced in Parliament who would be marvelous at that. Um, that we exist. I don't, yeah, yeah. Rose?
I have nothing to add. I mean, we have this conversation once a year with our entire board and with us, and we're always just on the same page. I think the only thing that I'd probably add on to it is that something needs to be done about the age cutoff. It's not good enough.
Yeah, I didn't even think to mention that point, Rose, but
And we
yeah,
need a decision about, we need a legal definition of what it is to be care experienced. No talks of
yeah,
characteristic until there's a legal definition of what it is to be care experienced, please.
yeah. I just want to click to that. Can't click with this hand, so I'll click with this one. But I click to that because it does need to happen. There to be a definition that is understood in policy and in writing. Um, because when a really good example of that not being good is when Article 39 took Gavin Williamson to court a few years ago. That's probably about a couple, yeah, it was more than 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Um, the judge there argued back and forth about the language that was being used and told Article 39 to use the term care leaver or looked after child because they were saying care experienced because that was that was the right definition to use. Whereas if there is a legal definition of what care experience actually means and is written by us, I'm going to shout that from the rooftops, is written by care experienced people collaboratively. Fab. I'd love to see that, and there to be no age limit on support.
Yeah.
Um, or there to be a transition where you go from children's social care to adult social care, but that it actually supports care experienced adults properly. So it kind of it's you have lifelong support if you've grown up in care in the same way that you have lifelong support from your family if you're not from a care experienced family. Because you do. And I have many friends who aren't care experienced whose families support them throughout life and they have that support, and we as care experienced people deserve that as the bare minimum for a choice that we didn't make.
I'll
Yeah.
back that. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people, who are care experienced, they often want to go down the route of helping other people with similar experiences. What advice would you give them to go down that path? What should their, what would you say are the first steps they should take? And how can they begin building their own platform while remaining grounded in their own experiences?
From the get-go, look after yourself. That has to
Yeah.
be the priority.
Therapy.
You can't do any advocacy work if it is at a detrimental to your own well-being and mental health. You're not doing justice to yourself, and you should always be an advocate and look after yourself from the get-go. As a young advocate, when I was much younger, I didn't do that from the get-go. I was very open about things I kind of low-key regret being open about. Hands up, and I can say that. So my advice to any care experienced person that is wanting to enter the space, but look after yourself while doing it. Their space is here for us to exist. Um, every single person has a voice, and it will be listened to. But look after yourself first, whatever that looks like to you, and looking after you and yourself, is that accessing counseling, if that's just making sure you have a wonderful support network of people who aren't in the space as well. That's really important to have spaces outside of it, outside of being care experienced. If that obviously have care experienced friends, obviously, that's not what I'm saying, but have spaces that exist outside of that. Don't allow it to take over you. Um, that's my pieces of advice. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say something that my therapist said to me when I had that little meltdown in front of Josh McAllister. Remember that anyone you come into you meet with who you perceive of being in a position of power, remember that they also fart and they shit. Then they're not these big important people that are infallible or anything like this. Honestly, when my therapist said that, it made me laugh so much. And since then, it's really bloody helped. Because since then, I have met MPs again. I've met other people that are in positions of power, and it's been so good having that in the back of my mind. Like, we perceive that these people that we see on TV or that we see making these big decisions about us have this ultimate control over us. A bit like how the three fates have that lifeline or whatever. And I'm doing my degree in classical studies, if you couldn't tell. Um, but like, they do not have ultimate power over us. They don't have ultimate power over our story, and they don't have ultimate power over what we can do and what we can make happen and what we can change. And worst comes to worst, we resort to what the French do. We get the guillotine and we start have some Molotov cocktails.
Love that.
That's Rose's personal opinion, not the movement's.
What advice do you have for other care experience individuals who may feel isolated or hesitant to speak out? How can they find their voice in the movement for change?
I think your voice will always be heard, even if it's just by another care experience person. The movement will always listen to your voice and will always give you a platform to use your voice. Just that. I think that is it on the 10. It can be really scary at first, but your voice will be heard, it will be listened to, and you'll be surrounded by care experienced people who want to listen to you and support you, no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, and just on the back of that, like a real world example here, the board member we were talking about earlier who left in the summer, um, they want to be part of stuff, but they weren't ready to actually vocalize it to actual people, which is absolutely fine. So what they did is they just reviewed bits of work and they're like, well, actually, I think this bit needs to be changed. And they wasn't saying that to us directly. That was literally having a Google document and just making little edits on the side page. There's no such thing as a voice for the voiceless. Everyone can communicate in any given way that they can communicate. And that is a hill that me and Isabelle will both freaking die on. There is no such thing as being a voice for the voiceless.
You can never be somebody's voice. Everybody has a voice. You just need to create the space for people's voices to be heard. That's just it on the 10. Always the way. Everybody has a voice. Even if they physically don't have a voice, they still have a voice that needs to be listened to and it still needs to be heard. Give them the platform to use their voice however they want to. And I guess that goes for care experience people. Use your voice however you want to use it. If that's writing a blog, do it. If just making voice notes, do it. It's here. Like you have your voice, use it however you want to.
What's one piece of advice you would offer to people who are listening who want to make a tangible difference in the lives of care experience individuals but aren't sure where to start? How can they be allies and better support the care experience community without overshadowing or speaking for them? What does true allyship look like in that space?
So for me personally, I think it's first of all stepping back and listening. So finding us. That we're everywhere. We're on social media. We're very vocal. There's easy hashtags. CEP, like Care Leaver. Like you can find the work out there. You can find organisations. For the movement directly, we have an open collective. So if people wanted to are able to financially contribute, then that's fantastic. There are other organisations out there that work with care experience people who will probably have donation pages as well. Sharing the work that care experience people are doing. So whether that be the movement with their blanket project, or work that Become is doing, or Blue Cabin, for example, another fantastic organisation that work with care experience people. And another thing as well, an old friendship group of mine, I was telling about the work that I was doing, and one of them has decided to basically step in and will take out a care experience person for an hour once a week. And it's just a really simple, easy thing to do. All he needs to do is clear a DBS, reach out to his local authority. So now all he's doing is taking out care experience people once a week for McDonald's or some shit. I think it is. I think it's McDonald's and Costa he does. And that just makes all the difference. Just having someone who is an adult who's consistent. Do not sign up for that if you do not have the time to commit on a daily basis, well, not daily basis, but like on a consistent basis, because there's going to be enough adults in that kid's life who has disappointed and left behind. Like, it can have such a massive impact, because I had that, and actually having that one person who took me out once a week was absolutely perfect. That's my personal opinion.
Everything Rose just said, and then just to add, a few years ago I made it was care experience week. As a care experience person, I find those weeks sometimes uncomfortable. Um, I find them to be very tokenistic. I don't like it, and out of pure anger and rage, I made a guide, and it was very simple, and I just named it a guide for care experience allies. Within that, I list a few things, so being like take a seat and listen. So actually listen to care experience people, listen to what we're saying. Don't make it about yourself. Like if don't I don't want to hear about your lovely upbringing unless I ask about it. Please tell me. Um, and let that care experience person speak about their experience. Check yourself, check your privilege of not being care experience and what that entails. Do some research, look into care experience. There is a lovely organization called Care Experience. It's like fiction and history or something from the top of my head. Let me get it up. Where they essentially share care experience work, culture and history. That is what it is. Where they share care experience work that's happening. That is academic work, that is books, that is movies, it's all of that. Take the bloody time to go on there or Google it or anything to do with care experience and actually listen to what is being said. Take the real time to understand the care experience journey. Don't be a voice for us. Don't speak on our behalf. Don't be like, oh God, this care experience people have it so hard. But like, look at what this person is doing. I'm sharing it. Shout from the rooftops that work. Um, and everything that Rose just said, talk to your local authority. They need people to support their young people. If that's mentoring, there are mentor schemes out there for care experience people. If you have the time, do it. Sign up for it, and you can have a real impact and change that care experience person's life. But literally, as Rose just said, only do it if you have the time to do it. We have so many adults coming in and out of our lives as young people. We need consistent grown-ups in our lives as young
That's
people.
not just us being all autistic in this space.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah, email your MP and your local council, asking them what they're doing for care experience people. Ask them if they've mentioned it recently in Parliament, all of those things. And as Rose said, have a look at care experience charities out there. Look at what that is. That could be us as the care experience movement, as a CIC. That could be another organisation like Become. You could like what they're doing. You could offer to support them. Look at them and look at what they're doing and actually offer support. Doesn't have to be financial. If it is, wonderful, but it doesn't have to be. Big old rant, but everything Rose said. Clap, clap, clap.
Are there any like upcoming projects, events, or resources you'd like to share with our audience?
Ooh. Our blanket project is about to launch. Part two of the project, blanket project is about to launch, where we have created some lovely blankets. So if you would like a blanket and you're care experienced, we may be able to offer you one. We would love that. It's free. You don't need to pay for delivery or anything like that. We will completely cover that. So if you'd like a lovely little crochet blanket. Another project is we're about to deliver some creative workshops in Liverpool with an organisation here called Thrive. We're looking to do that again with another organisation. So if you're care experienced and you work with an organisation in your area and you're like, oh, I'd love to do something creative, get in touch with us and we can see what we can do in that sense. And then, yeah, we have another project launching in a few months, which we are not going to mention too much about because, yeah, we don't want to.
Where
exciting, but yeah.
so like to find out about what's happening in a few months, where can our listeners find you or connect with you to stay up to date with your work?
So there's our website, which is literally just thecareexperiencemovement.com. However, it's probably best, just because of the current generation and the current climate of the world, our Instagram and our LinkedIn, which again is literally just careexperiencemovement.com, or just Care Experience Movement. Or if you go on our website, as all websites do, it's like at the bottom, you can click on the links. Um, we update things on there regularly enough. We also have a newsletter that comes out every 2 months, which will have a big list of things and opportunities. They're our best places to find us. We don't use Twitter anymore because boo Twitter. I'm just saying that now. Boo Twitter. It's gone down the drain, or X as it's now called. We don't use that. I guess it's been an intersectional organization. We recognise how rubbish that platform has become. Not to get all leftist there, but yeah. But yeah, Instagram, that's where we mainly post, isn't it, Rose? I think, in LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah.
Especially LinkedIn. LinkedIn scares me, but our lovely chair Millie knows what they're doing on that. So yeah.
Finally, what is one thing that you're grateful for today?
It's not to do with work, but I'm grateful for people who have shared interests because I've got my book club this evening and it's going to be an absolute riot.
I love that. I think I'm grateful, even though it frustrated me in the moment, that my daughter likes to wake me up by pulling herself up and standing on me and shouting in my ear. So I think I'm actually quite grateful that I have that, and I get to experience that, um, and that I get to go do my food shop. I'm grateful that I get to go do that too, actually. I enjoy Asda. I enjoy walking around Asda. It's an autistic, lovely time, because we go around in a very particular pattern and everything's in the right place. So it makes me happy.
As we come to the end of this powerful conversation, I want to take a moment to thank the incredible Isabelle Kirkham and Rose Regan for sharing their inspiring stories, their unwavering commitment to the care experience community, and their vision for a future where care experience individuals are seen, heard, and valued. Their activism, resilience, and passion remind us that all real change begins when we challenge the status quo, uplift each other, and centre the voices of those who have been most marginalised. It's clear the work they're doing with the care experience movement is nothing short of transformative, and it's been an honour to delve deep into their journey. For anyone listening today, I hope this episode has sparked reflection, provided new perspectives, and encouraged you to take action in your own life, however big or small. Whether you're part of the care experience community or an ally, remember that our collective strength is what fuels the change we seek. But before we go, I want to leave you with this. Your story, your experience, and your voice matters. There is power in sharing your truth and coming together and supporting each other. So let's continue to break down the barriers, amplify those who have been silenced, and make the world a better place for all. Stay iconic. Until next time.